The polished stone floors of Rivers-Hallman Industries echoed just the same as they had when I was a teenager, cold, elegant, and unwelcoming. I hadn't stepped foot in the building in over 6 years, not since the reading of my father's will. Yet here I was, back in downtown San Diego, standing in the very lobby where I'd once handed out coffee during summer internships. I adjusted the sleeves of my crisp gray suit. This wasn't the Elena who used to sit quietly in boardrooms, dismissed as Rodger Hallman's charity case. This was Elena Rivers, someone they no longer recognized. The front desk assistant, a young man named Tyler, looked up from his monitor. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't see your name listed for today's board meeting." I smiled softly. "Check again. I should be there." A familiar voice sliced through the space like a blade. "Is there a problem here?" There he was, Rodger Hallman, my late father's stepson, still smug in a navy pinstripe suit, hair perfectly parted, charm dripping like oil. "Well, well, if it isn't Elena," he said, mouth curling into a patronizing grin. "Did you get lost on your way to a WeWork pitch? This is a shareholder meeting, not open mic night for failed startups." 6 years ago, after my father's sudden stroke, Rodger and his mother Nadine took full control of the company. I was forced out under the guise of organizational restructuring. They said I didn't have the experience. They didn't even give me a seat at the table. "I'm not here for sympathy," I replied calmly. "I'm here for the meeting." He chuckled, stepping between me and the elevator. "Board meetings are for shareholders only. Don't embarrass yourself." That's when Tyler's voice interrupted, hesitant. Mr. Hallman? There's been a last-minute update on the list. Miss Rivers is listed now as a Class A voting shareholder." Asher's expression faltered, the smile gone. "That's not possible. I would have been notified." "I'm surprised you haven't checked the company registry this morning," I said, pulling out my phone and opening the file I received from my legal team. "You'll see that 52% of Rivers-Hallman now belongs to me. Quietly, transferred over the past 6 years." His jaw clenched. "You had no right." I stepped into the elevator. Actually, I had every right. My father gave it to me. He just made sure I'd claim it when I was ready. I held the door open a moment longer. "Coming, Rodger. The board is waiting." Nadine Hallman stepped out of the elevator, her sharp heels clicking across the marble as she scanned the lobby, then stopped cold when she saw me. "What is she doing here?" she asked, voice clipped with the same disdain I remembered from my teenage years. "Mom, I'm handling it," Rodger muttered, trying to maintain his composure. I glanced at the sleek silver clock behind the front desk. "It's 9:58. The meeting starts in 2 minutes," I said. "Would you like to hash this out here in the lobby? Or shall we preserve a shred of dignity and go upstairs?" Nadine's smile didn't reach her eyes. Her hand twitched near her pearl necklace, the same tick she had when she was cornered. "Let her up," she said tightly. "We'll handle this disruption properly." As the elevator rose, I heard my father's voice in my mind. "Be patient, Elena. Everything is in place. Wait for the right moment." The doors opened to the top floor, the same boardroom I hadn't seen in over 6 years. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the mahogany table in golden California sunlight. Around it sat 12 of San Diego's most powerful executives. Every head turned. "This is a closed meeting," Rodger barked. "Security will be here any second to—" "Actually," I cut in, stepping forward, "I believe I belong here. After all." I let my eyes fall on Nadine. "A majority shareholder should attend, don't you think?" A long silence. Rodger's smirk withered. "Sometimes the best revenge isn't just showing up. It's showing up with proof." I walked calmly to the far end of the table and took the chair that had once belonged to my father. Rodger stayed standing, his jaw twitching, his confidence unraveling. "This is ridiculous," Nadine snapped, her fingers digging into the back of her chair. "Rodger, call legal, now." I placed my briefcase on the table and removed a thick file, the Rivers-Hallman logo stamped across the front. "No need, your legal team received everything an hour ago." Right on cue, the boardroom doors opened. Thomas Vega, longtime corporate counsel, entered. His expression was neutral but firm. "The documents are valid," he announced, scanning the table. "Through a series of strategic investments and silent partnerships, Miss Rivers now holds controlling interest in Rivers-Hallman Industries." Gasps, murmurs. Asher slammed his palm on the table. "That's impossible. We'd have seen the transactions. Board approval is required." I leaned forward, calm. "Unless those shares were acquired through separate entities, each staying just below the reportable threshold. And as of this morning," I smiled, "they've all been consolidated under my name, transferred all holdings to Rivers Global Capital," Thomas Vega concluded. Nadine collapsed into her chair, the illusion of poise draining from her features like paint melting off porcelain. "How much?" she rasped. 75%, I answered, voice steady, "which makes me, effective immediately, the majority shareholder of Rivers-Hallman Industries." A wave of unease rippled through the boardroom. These weren't just any executives. They were Nadine's hand-picked circle, men and women whose promotions and perks were tied to her influence, not merit. "This is my father's company," Asher snapped, voice cracking beneath his fury. "You have no right." "Actually," I interrupted, locking eyes with him, "this was my father's company too. Or have you forgotten who built it before your mother pushed him into early retirement?" The room fell dead silent. Everyone in that room knew the whispers, how Nadine had charmed and maneuvered her way into both the boardroom and my father's home, how she championed Asher as the heir, while isolating and undermining the man who founded the company. "First, Mr. Vega," I said, "please distribute the new organizational chart." A thick packet slid from folder to folder, landing like hammer strikes. The document outlined sweeping changes, new leadership, new compliance oversight, and yes, new ownership. Asher paled as he skimmed the pages. "You can't do this," Nadine muttered, barely audible now. "Can't I?" I replied, turning to the wall mount screen behind me. A few taps later, the company's financial dashboard appeared. Highlighted rows, flagged anomalies, and transfers buried in subaccounts. "Shall we talk about the offshore accounts, the consulting contracts paid to your brother's shell companies, the executive bonuses masked as R&D expenses?" I started around the table. No one came to Nadine's defense now. They were already detaching, self-preservation in full swing. "Or," I added, scrolling down, "should we revisit the shares that were supposedly liquidated to settle the estate, because the forged signatures on those transfer documents say otherwise?" Asher's hand trembled as he reached for his water glass. "Those transactions were legal," he said weakly. "Were they?" I raised an eyebrow. "Because the SEC has already opened an inquiry, and trust me, they're very interested in your paperwork." I stood, addressing the room with calm authority. "We can either execute this transition professionally," I said, "or we can let federal investigators seize everything." Just then, my phone buzzed. Message from compliance team. "All personnel in position. Audit ready." "You have 5 minutes," I said, glancing at the clock. "Choose wisely." Tick, tick. As Nadine and Asher exchanged panicked looks, they finally understood. This wasn't a comeback. It was a takeover. And it had only just begun. If you've ever been underestimated, pushed aside, or told you didn't belong, this story is for you. Subscribe to the channel and stay with me, because what happened next, in that boardroom, it changed everything. While my team secured key executive offices on the upper floors, I stood at the head of the boardroom table and clicked to the first slide in my presentation. The room dimmed, silence falling heavy. "This," I began, "is the result of a 7-year investigation into Rivers-Hallman's internal operations." Slide after slide, I laid it out. Fraudulent stock transfers, unauthorized board votes, manipulated financial disclosures, and questionable offshore activity. The words "systematic fraud" glared from the screen like a spotlight on guilt. Asher's complexion drained from red to pale. "You can't prove," he started. I cut him off. "Actually, I can't." I clicked again, and an email thread appeared on the screen. "It includes this exchange, your meeting request with my father the night before his heart attack." Nadine shot to her feet so fast her chair clattered behind her. You're making accusations without— Without what? I said, turning calmly. Evidence. Next slide. A black and white security feed played. Asher entering my father's office late at night. The timestamp matched. The room stared at the footage in stunned silence. The cameras you had disabled? They backed up automatically to an off-site server, I explained. And your conversation? It was caught on audio. Gasps. Particularly your line about him stepping down or facing consequences. Asher was visibly sweating now. That's not— I didn't— The police found it very interesting, I continued, as did the toxicologist I hired to reanalyze samples from my father's final medical exam. Modern science can detect things that used to slip through. Madine's icy facade finally cracked. Her eyes narrowed. You vindictive little Mrs. Hallman. Thomas Vega's voice was sharp. I strongly advise you not to say another word without counsel. I stood motionless, thinking of the years I spent in silence. Gathering, documenting, waiting. Oh, and speaking of counsel, I added, checking my phone, the FBI agents in the lobby are ready to speak with you regarding the offshore transactions linked to your brother's firms. Panic broke. Board members leaned away from Nadine and Asher like they were contagious. Some began whispering. Others reached for their phones. This isn't just about ownership, I said. This is about justice. For my father, for the employees you lied to, and for every investor you defrauded. My phone buzzed again. FBI team ready. Confirm entry. Asher lunged for the door. Security intercepted. He didn't resist. He couldn't. For the first time, I saw him not as the man who stole my father's company, but as the scared boy he'd always been, trying to hide from a reckoning he knew was coming. Nadine remained frozen in her seat, staring blankly. You planned all of this, she whispered. All these years. I met her eyes, voice like steel. I learned from the best. You taught me how to play the long game, Nadine, I thought, eyes briefly resting on her now empty chair. All those speeches about timing, optics, and influence. Turns out I was listening more than you realized. The boardroom was quiet now. Those who remained weren't looking at me with dismissal anymore. No smug glances. No first patience. What I saw in their eyes now was a potent blend of caution and respect. They hadn't just watched a leadership shift. They'd witnessed the fall of a dynasty and the rise of its quietest shadow. As of this moment, I began evenly, standing at the head of the long table. Rivers-Hallman is under new management. I let that settle before continuing. Those who cooperate with the investigation will be treated fairly, those who don't. My gaze fell deliberately on the vacant spot where Nadine once sat. Will face the consequences. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, dusk was falling fast. Red and blue police lights danced faintly on the glass. Sirens faded into the distance. They were gone now, but their legacy wouldn't survive the night. 5 years of meticulous planning, of silence, of playing the overlooked stepdaughter while quietly building networks, auditing records, and pulling strings. All of it led here. But this wasn't my ending. This was phase 2. Over the next few weeks, the transformation was swift and brutal. News anchors dubbed it the Rivers Revolution: internal audits, resignations, arrests, restructuring. Within 21 days, the entire upper structure of the company had been replaced. But for me, it wasn't just about headlines or shareholder meetings. It was justice, served cold, precise, and permanent. Asher and Nadine's arrests dominated the news cycle. Rivers' heirs indicted in multi-million-dollar fraud case. CEO death reopened as foul play suspected. It was on every screen in every lobby, but the story that truly changed everything came later. Late CEO's death under investigation, new evidence emerges. I sat behind the same desk my father once did in what was now my office. One personal item remained, his photo, straightened neatly on the corner. I turned a page of the latest forensic audit, each line exposing another betrayal. The intercom buzzed. Mrs. Rivers, the board members are here for the emergency session. I didn't hesitate, send them in. They walked in slower this time, shoulders lower, faces stripped of bravado, It was amazing how subpoenas and federal scrutiny could transform even the most arrogant executive. "Thank you for coming," I said smoothly, watching how they leaned in now, no longer pretending not to. "Today, we discuss the future of Rivers-Hallman, or as it will soon be known, Carter Technologies." The room murmured at the name change. Symbolic, yes. Necessary, absolutely. "The preliminary investigation," I continued, "suggests some of you were aware of Asher and Nadine's actions. Some of you even enabled them." A voice cracked from the far end. "Miss Rivers, we were under immense pressure." "Save it," I cut in. "I'm not here for excuses. I'm here for solutions. You each have until the end of the day to submit your resignations or your cooperation records for the federal investigation," I said calmly, meeting every gaze. "Choose wisely." They rose, silent and subdued, filing out like a tide that had finally turned. The moment the door shut behind them, my phone buzzed. "Inmate request, Asher Hallman, would like to schedule a visit." Stared at the screen for a moment, then hit decline. Some conversations weren't worth reopening. Later that evening, as I sat in my office with the leadership team reviewing Carter Technologies' rebranding roadmap, Thomas Vega stepped in quietly, a folder in hand. "The new toxicology report," he said. "It's conclusive. Your father didn't suffer a heart attack, he was poisoned." I closed my eyes as the weight of 7 years lifted. "What about charges?" "They're adding first-degree murder to the indictment. Nadine cracked under questioning this morning. She's blaming everything on Asher." Of course she was. Nadine Hallman had always been a survivor, even if it meant sacrificing her son to save herself. The next morning I stood before the entire company. The main auditorium was packed. Executives, engineers, assistants, janitors, all waiting. Rivers-Hallman was founded on my father's values. Innovation, integrity, and impact, I said. Values that were corrupted by those who used this company for personal gain. Today, we reset. I announced sweeping changes, transparent pay structures, expanded healthcare, paid parental leave, and a new profit-sharing program that gave every employee ownership in our shared future. But what brought the crowd to its feet? We're also launching the James Rivers Foundation for Corporate Ethics, funded entirely by the recovered offshore accounts. Its mission? To investigate corporate corruption and prevent what happened here from happening again anywhere. The applause was thunderous. That evening, as I gathered my things, I found an old photo album tucked in the back of my father's desk drawer. There we were, me and Dad, smiling at my college graduation. Before the betrayals, before the lies. "You were right," I whispered. "Patience is the sharpest kind of justice." My phone buzzed again. Nadine's lawyer. She wanted to testify against Asher in exchange for leniency. "No deal," I replied. "Let them devour each other, just like they tried to devour my father's legacy." As night fell over San Diego, I looked out across the glowing skyline, already reviewing tomorrow's agenda. Board restructuring, compliance initiatives, and the launch of our new ethical AI division. Asher once told me board meetings were for shareholders only. Funny how things turn out. Now, I don't just hold shares. I own the game. Because the best revenge isn't reclaiming what was stolen. It's building something better. If you've ever been underestimated, silenced, or pushed to the margins by people who thought they held all the power, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Tell me what part of this story spoke to your experience. Because behind every quiet step we take, there's a storm we've survived. If this journey meant something to you, support it. Subscribe, share, and let others know. We are not invisible. And remember this, patience is not weakness, planning is not passivity. Sometimes the best revenge is living in full view, unshaken and undeniable.